Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I'm your host, MGCovers. This is episode 69. Greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. Happy Monday. Different background. I'm in a new apartment, so the background you're looking at not as sexy as the old apartment. So hopefully I'll only be here for 30 days. A little bit inconvenient location for me for where I live to play golf, but all is good here. Beautiful day here in the Caribbean. Time to talk about on this podcast. We're going to talk about overs and unders in Major League Baseball, and something very important that happens in Major League Baseball this time of the year until the end of the season. You need to be conscious of it, especially if you're wagering on Major League Baseball. It's been a tough year for myself and many other casual bettors as well as sharps. We're also going to we're talking about a personal story with me. And I mentioned this on Instagram a little bit yesterday. We're going to visit and talk about a very polarizing figure in sports betting who has had success in the past. I would definitely label him a sharp. It's not to throw shade on him, but it's to talk about a major problem. He's went down about 30 units in the last 2 weeks. And I'm going to show you and prove to you why it's 100% mental, and the reason that he's created an even greater deficit for this year, because I have done it as well. I'll show you a personal example. So hopefully by seeing that, you'll be able to learn from that. Okay, so first off, let's dive into and talk about totals for Major League Baseball. Now, if you remember with this totals model, we had done extremely well. We were playing unders. So from 624, when we changed the model, all the way up to 618, I'm sorry, 718. It was, if you can see it down there, is that correct? Was that 6.1 units? No, All-Star break was 713. My bad. Okay, here's All-Star break. There we go. Our All-Star break, 7.2 units. So prior to the All-Star break, very good model. So from 624 to 713, whatever that is. If I can pull this up, so many weeks that is. So that was about 4 weeks. So that's very, very profitable. Great. Of course, grading one play as 1 unit. And then what you're looking at here, if you're new, this is our F5 line is what we use to play off of the total. So whenever our F5 line is 3.99 or lower combined for both teams, we would play the under. You can see the under over here, the actual totals number that we played. Now, look what has happened since 718. We add this up, and it's not like it's done terrible. See down there in the lower right-hand corner, it is down minus 1.2 units. And let's actually get the wins and losses from 718. So it's 12 losses, 12 wins. Okay, so it's basically hitting 50%. So we're just paying juice right there. So again, it's not like it's bad, but it does feel like it's going to be difficult to profit from unders from now into the remaining of this season. Not saying it's not impossible, but to talk about why is because of bullpen fatigue. Bullpen fatigue happens every year in Major League Baseball. And I don't know why it's worse obviously all these players are tired. It's a very laborious, is that a word? Laborious schedule for Major League Baseball, 162 games. So it's difficult for hitters, difficult for starting pitchers, but it seems that the performance, it declines drastically for bullpens late in the season. And let me just give you some context and show you, and we're going to slide over here and look at the games from yesterday. And I want to show you what I mean. Okay, first off, we had a totals play for St. Louis and San Diego, meaning if I would have played via the model, this would have been a play. You can see there the line was 8. Generally speaking, that's when the books, and you can see there the juice at minus 121. So more than likely that line had moved in favor of the under. In fact, let's just check that to make sure. I'm pretty sure that it did. Take a look at, this is I was going to say the old site, bookmakersreview.com. They show odds for a lot of your offshore books. Bookmaker is one that's sharp. Yep. So take a look at 10:30. Let's take a 10:50 a.m. The line was under 8, minus 110. And for totals, a lot of times the books won't move the line. They'll simply move the juice. So the juice is all the way up to minus 121. So the line was, the line was moving in favor of the under. And that was actually a good play. I mean, we had it via the model. But now let's take a look at this box score. So yet San Diego scored 4 runs in the bottom of they scored 2 runs in the bottom of the 4th. Look at innings 7, 8, and 9. 4 runs for San Diego, the bottom of the 7th. 1 run for San Diego, the bottom of the 8th. Top of the ninth, St. Louis, boom, 3 runs. 8 runs in 3 innings. So obviously this went over. You said, well, that's one example, MG. Show me some more. Okay, let's do it. Let's take a look at Houston and Boston. All right, this game was decided in the 4th inning. 7 runs in the 4th, nothing late. So again, you're not going to see bullpen fatigue on every single game. Well, here we go. Look at Dodgers Tampa. The scoreless game through 5 innings, 6th, 7th, 9th. Dodgers put over a run. So that game was decided by the bullpen. Atlanta Cincinnati. Atlanta scores 4 in the 2nd. That basically was the ball game at that point. They put another one up in the 7th. Milwaukee, Washington. Look at this one. 2 runs in the 6th, 7 runs in the 7th, 2 runs in the 8th. Washington gets 2 in the bottom of the 9th. So you have a total of 13 runs from the 6th inning on. 13 runs in 4 innings. Let's look at KC and Toronto. All right, this one's going to extra innings. 8th inning. Looks like KC got a run to tie it up. Top of the 10th, 5 runs. Bottom of the 2nd, 2 runs. Now, I understand they do put a runner on second. That puts a lot more pressure on the defense. I get that. But 7 runs in 1 inning, regardless of how you manipulate it, putting a runner on second base to start with 0 outs is still a lot of runs. San Francisco and the Mets. Top of the 9th inning, 5 runs for San Francisco, 2 in the bottom of the 9th for the Mets. Minnesota, 1 run in the 8th, 2 runs in the 9th. They scored 33% of the runs were scored in the 8th and 9th inning. New York and Miami, big New York-Miami game. Remember that crazy comeback for Miami earlier in the week? Same deal here. You have 3 runs scored in the 7th. How about Baltimore and the Cubs here? There we go. There's 3 runs in 1 inning in the 9th. Pittsburgh and Colorado, probably not fair to use Colorado considering that ballpark, but 7 runs in the 6th, 1 in the 8th. So from the 6th inning on, you're looking at 8 runs. Arizona and Athletics. From the 7th, 8th, and 9th, we score 4 runs in 3 innings. White Sox, LA Angels, it was a 9.5 total. Look at this one. 6th, 3 runs. 7th, 2 runs. 9th, 3 runs. So you got 8 runs in 4 innings. We'll skip St. Louis, San Diego. Already talked about that. Texas and Seattle, only 1 run in the 6th. And, of course, pitchers duel last night with Detroit and Philadelphia. So you can see that these bullpens get fatigued every year, and the majority, not 100%, but the majority of these games are determined late by bullpens. And I've often said this, bullpens generally do not win games, meaning they can preserve a lead. So if the pitching, you have a good performance by the pitcher, you put together some runs, you're up 4-0 going into the 7th inning, the bullpen plays decent, maybe they give up 2 runs, you win that game 4-2, but they can definitely lose it. Guy gets on first and second, next guy up, home run, now it's 4-3. They put in another pitcher. He doesn't have good stuff, gives up a home run. Now it's 4-4. And you go to extra innings, it's a coin flip game, which I'm going to bring up an interesting point. And this is going to be my strategy if we continue to wager baseball. I would totally recommend only playing dogs, regardless of how you handicap, just because there's so much variance. Another example would be Houston and Boston yesterday. Let me see if this line moved. I'm pretty sure this line moved in favor of Houston. Yep. Opened at -110, closes at 122. Line moving in favor of Houston. Huge edge pitching wise. Boston wins 6-1. Just so much variance in this sport. So if you have the unpredictability of the bullpens and every game is basically, quote, a coin flip game, 50-50 game, there's no value if you're playing favorites. And this is why baseball is a sport where you can get buried very, very easily in this sport. And obviously we're down this year, extremely profitable last 2 years, but my strategy, or what I would recommend to anybody if you're going to play this, would be simply playing dogs because of the variance. Now, with that being said, my approach to totals, I want to show you something very interesting. See if I can pull this up. Make sure I'm not sharing any proprietary information here. Okay, what you're looking at now is an overs tracker. All right, so I don't know if I can pull up my lines or not. Okay, so what we did, let me go back to this tab and I'll explain it if you're listening to it on Spotify and Apple. Big shout out to those people that listen to the podcast every week. So for totals, what we did was, if to play an under, our F5 line needed to be 3.9 or less. So now, in order to play an over, or how I was tracking this, if both teams combine for 4.0 or higher, it would be a play on the over, contingent upon that line being 9.5 or less. So the average number of runs scored in a Major League Baseball game is basically 8.5. So we go 1 point above the mean, nothing higher than that, because at that point, very difficult. Same reason why I would not recommend playing an under that's 6.5. We saw that one, what was that, 3 nights ago, go down all the way to 6, just based on simple value. You've overvalued the underside. So if they're giving you 6 points on a total, average number of runs scored, 8.5, just playing and factor in regression to the mean, advantageous to play the over in that particular game. Can't remember I think it might have been Philadelphia and Detroit, advantageous to play the over. So now let me show you what happened when I went back and tracked this. So if we go back to, I started tracking this post All-Star break. You look from 7/18 all the way up until, let's look at 7/28. So from 7/18 to 7/28, playing the overs this way was minus 4.3 units. And the reason I believe it was down, teams coming off the All-Star break, they had a full week of rest. Hitters were rested. Starting pitching was rested. Bullpen was rested. Now, look what happens playing these. It was down minus 4.3 units to start. But now look what happens from 7/29 all the way up and through yesterday, which is basically the last week. It was up a total of 5 units. All right. So I'm seriously considering actually flipping it and actually playing the overs here, because it went on a really, really good run. What's that? 16 and 8. So very, 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 very solid run there. Now, overall, if you track it back to the beginning of the second half of the season through yesterday, it was 37 and 33, 0.7 units. But again, just in the last week, I've started to see this transition with the bullpen. Bullpen starting to get fatigued, and I think it's something that you'll see running all the way into September. And that might be a profitable strategy. Very difficult to find edges, and sometimes, of course, I would never just make up something. I'm always going to use the model, which is what we're doing here, but very difficult, I think, to handicap baseball. And if I did continue to wager, probably still would wager underdogs, what I talked about, but it definitely looks like unders. I don't have a lot of confidence with unders. If you maybe wager on whether unders would be profitable, meaning like, well, we're at 6 units now, to think that would, if there was an over under and I had to wager if it was going to make it to 15 units or not, I would definitely wager the under. Meaning like it still could be potentially profitable because I think there's some value in it. The game we passed on, let's pull that back up again, 2 days ago. Yeah, on 8-2, you can see there, Kansas City wins, Arizona wins, previous day lost. So, it's 12 and 12 post All-Star break. So it's not like it's been terrible. Just hasn't been profitable and just playing juice. So it continued to have some value, but I think these overs, not 100% going to wager on that, but definitely something to think about. Or if you already have a model in place, it might be something to look to where you can take a look at your model and figure out a way to justify playing an over. And again, I wouldn't play it when it was a huge number, like a Colorado game, or if that line's like 10.5, because then you're 2 points above the mean. But, if the total is like 8.5, you got, your model indicates a play on the over, then that might be something to definitely consider. Because again, you're going to have these bullpen games. If it goes to extra innings, probably going to score some runs in the extra for sure. But nonetheless, baseball, extremely difficult year. One positive that I've done as well is I've kept a tracker of all of the model information for every single day, so that when I go back to start for next year, I'll have a complete database from, from all the way from like June all the way up until now. So that's going to be very advantageous to do that. So even when you're struggling, frustrated, always try to keep a copy of stuff, and very easy to do in Google Sheets. If you're not familiar with Google Sheets, definitely something you need to get a hold of. Everything's automatically saved. If I make a change here, if I make this 31 right here, at the bottom, I don't have to change anything. It just automatically saves it for me, is what I meant. All right. Now, second part of this podcast, I want to move on to, I don't know what to title this, maybe ego in sports betting. And I think everybody that, I was trying to remember that quote I said on social last night. If you've had success in sports betting, and this is true for any sharp, or if you're just starting out and you've had a successful model, it's a huge adrenaline rush, and you've made that model profitable. You've actually made money on it through an entire season. Maybe you just created a NHL model that was profitable. It is a huge adrenaline rush, and it gives you a ton of confidence. And I'm not knocking that at all. But I do want to talk about the danger of being profitable in this business long term, or in my position, which I would label myself as a sharp. And again, there's not many sharps out there, and that the only way to define success in this business is people that can win long term. That's it. I mean, that's the only measuring. Somebody sounds like a sharp, but no way to prove that they're profitable long term. They're not a sharp. Or somebody's on a podcast, or somebody has 80,000 followers. The only measure of success in sports betting is can you win long term? And despite the not being successful this year in Major League Baseball, we're still profitable year to date, which is very difficult to do. And I feel like with college football season coming in, not to get too much ahead of myself, really excited about that model. I might share and do a video on that as the week progresses. But back to ego and sports betting. And I want to go back to last year. This was the MLB model. And what I've highlighted in green was 831. All right, now I'm going to scroll down and show you what the total was from 831 going all the way back to when we started wagering on baseball. This was our log for Major League Baseball for 2024. So from the beginning of the year, which was 5/13 when we started, May the 13th of last year when we started wagering on Major League Baseball, we had hit 50 units in Major League Baseball. 50 units. And again, that's grading one play as 1 unit. If we wager a plus 134 dog and it wins, we're up 1.34 units. If we wager in a minus 122 favorite and we lose, that's minus 1.22 units. So we had hit 50 units through August the 29th. Clients were excited. I was extremely excited, extremely happy. I had never, and this is important, since doing this since 2014, had never had a season where I had hit in any sport 50 units. I'd done a couple that had hit 30 units, but I'd never had a season where, and even 40 units was a new high for one particular sport. So this is the first time ever in the history of wagering for me personally hitting 50 units. And that is extremely difficult to do in any sport. So here's what should have happened. This is not what I did, but this is what I should have done. Recognize this is a huge milestone. To think that you could do any better than that was ludicrous in my opinion. But the problem with ego, and when you're actually in the moment, hey, we're at 50 units. I got clients excited. I'm excited. We've made a ton of money. Hey, maybe we can hit 60, right? The optimism aspect does not work in sports betting. You need to take optimism out and you need to be a realist because I think even the month of July, we had hit like 60%, like the whole month was running and hitting 60% with a model. So at this point, what I should have done was said, hey guys, we have had one hell of a year. We've never hit 50 units. The likelihood of us amassing more than that, considering how astronomically impossible hitting 50 units in one season is, we're going to call it a season. And that should have been on August the 29th. We're at 50.33 units. And all this I knew about bullpen fatigue. But the ego aspect of it, thinking like, hey, let's continue to wager. Maybe we'll hit 60 units. But I want you to see what actually happened. And actually, I don't have highlighted through September, but so when we hit 50 units, what was that on August 29th? Let's look what happens from 9/1 to 9/9. So you're just talking about just 8 days from 9/1 to 9/9. We had 3 wins and 15 losses. We went on a 3-15 run, which if you take the optimism out of it, and somebody had sent me this model and said, what should I do? I probably would have said, hey, shut it down. You're at 50 units. You've never hit 50 units before. It's extremely doubtful you're going to do better than that. And then look what happened when we continued to wager a 3-15 run. Down 13, what was that? 13 units. So that was down minus 13.27 units. Now that was brutal. But again, this was 100% mental decision, mental mistake on my part. And then if you go back over to the year to date, these are last year with everything, 47.04 units. If we'd have done what I should have done and stopped when we hit 50 units, we'd have had 60 units year to date for 2024. But again, I was living in the moment. Hey, we're at 50 units, had that optimistic ego, which is not beneficial in sports betting, continued to wager and basically got crushed. Now we're going to move on and talk about Steve Fezzik. We mentioned this last week. And again, I want to preface this by saying I'm not throwing shade on this gentleman because obviously he's a sharp. He's been extremely successful in the past. He had a successful year last year, 19 units. A lot of people threw shade on it. I was one of the ones. I think I may even retweeted it because if you're profitable in this business, albeit 20 units, 10 units, 30 units, whatever that number is, year to date, you're better than 95% of the people that place wagers on sports. So by definition, you win long term, you are a sharp. And this was somebody tweeting out that I'm making the assumption that the person that's tweeting this. Okay, here we go. I am making the assumption the person that is tweeting this information is accurately following him. Maybe he subscribed to his plays where he can actually see this. So on July 23rd, he tweeted out, Steve Fezzik is down minus 37.22 units. So in calendar terms, that was basically what, 2 weeks ago? 723. Not even 2 weeks ago. So on just remember that, July 23rd, he's down 37.22 units, July 23rd. Now, if we go to yesterday, this gentleman tweeted out, Twitter handle is BDGRSPRTS service spelled exactly like it sounds without a E. So it's basically, looks like Badger Sports Service. Now, he tweeted this about Fezzik. This was on August 3rd. So this is yesterday. He is down year to date minus 64.42 units. So in less than 2 weeks, he has almost doubled his losses. He's almost lost another 30 units. And I am willing to bet, I can't get inside the mind of Fezzik, but considering his background, considering that he has been a sharp in the past, in the hole, it's hard. It's probably hard for him to accept that he's 37 units in the hole, and he's probably telling himself, hey, I'm a sharp, I'm good at this. Again, that optimistic thinking, it doesn't work in sports betting. I'm a sharp, I should be winning, I'm going to keep plowing. So it's obvious whatever he's doing, whether it's modeling, whether it's top down, whatever he's doing, it is not working. But because of the optimistic thinking, because of the ego, maybe even some of the social media pressure that he's facing tells him, hey, I'm going to keep plowing. And look what happens. I did the same thing in soccer. Those of you remember that from, I guess I spent 4 years now. I did everything correctly on the front end. When we started to wager full units in soccer, we were playing draws. The first day went 2-4. Remember it, 2-4. So we made, and I was wagering full units. So we made like $2,500 that day, something like that. Really profitable day. Then it went on like a 2-19 run. Should have shut it down, kept going. And then that was the year we were down, lost about, everything else was pretty much even, but we were in a whole year to date, like 27 grand that year. So again, you have to be objective when you're evaluating yourself and your process, and you have to be man enough to admit what you're doing is not working. And it's very hard to do. It's the same reason if you're an alcoholic, the first thing they tell you to do when you go to AA is what? My name's Michael. I'm an alcoholic. Because you're not going to improve. You will not get better if you think you do not have a problem. You're not going to improve. And that's true of anything in life. If you're 50 pounds overweight, you don't view yourself as overweight. You don't look at it as, hey, I have an issue. Well, then you're not going to go on a diet. You're not going to go to the gym. You're not going to exercise. Not saying, I'm not blaming people that take that disposition, but I'm just telling you what it is. The only way to improve in anything in life is you have to first recognize, hey, I have a problem and I've got to fix this. But I am 99.99% sure all of this, and the reason he's went 30 units in the hole in less than 2 weeks, is all ego, thinking it's going to eventually turn around. I'm a sharp. I can do this. I can recover. And maybe even doubling down. I mean, I don't know if he's, wagering, 2 units, 3 unit plays or whatever, but it's obvious that whatever he's doing is not working. So again, you want to be objective and be extremely hard on yourself in this business and take every bit of knowledge that you have and use that to your advantage. Same deal with yesterday. We looked at a totals play, St. Louis, that one play I showed you. We had a play via the under. I didn't feel comfortable wagering it. Why? Because I knew these bullpens were starting to collapse. Using judgment there, hey, I'm not going to play this. And then I'm sitting here today, August the 4th, wondering if I'm even going to place another Major League Baseball bet. Because obviously the season's over, quote, September, at least for wagering. After that point, it becomes extremely unpredictable, hard to assess motivation. So when we have, 4 weeks left? And then we've got college football coming up in 3 weeks. So That's my dilemma. And if you are going to wager, I would definitely wager small. All these wagers we wagered have been like 1/5 unit, $200, 1/3 unit, $300. But anyway, you got to be brutally honest with yourself. Even though something worked in the past, is there a possibility that what you're currently doing will not work one day when you wake up? Yes, that happens in this business. I just showed it to you with baseball. One of the best models I ever had. I could have finished the season with 50 units. It was still a great year, but I'm saying I could have put that trophy up and said, hey, we made 50 units. We had 50 units. And then I could have used an example of what would happen if we continue to wager. But instead, it's a painful financial lesson to tell you guys on this podcast. So factoring all that in, if you've got a model that works, continue to use it. Don't make any changes, but be smart, be perceptive of what's happening. Again, this is why the more you educate yourself in this business, I'm constantly learning. Regardless of what level you are, you have to constantly learn. This business continues to get more difficult every single day. And if you tap out and basically say, hey, what I'm doing is going to work, I'm going to ride it to the first shovel of dirt hits my face, it can lead to disaster. And that's what we've seen with Fezzik losing 30 units in 2 weeks. So again, be smart, drop the ego, and continue to improve, make good decisions. And that's going to be a wrap for this podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. Talk to you guys the rest of the week, and see you next week for episode 70.